My name's Ethan Rivera. I'm 39, ex-military, medically retired, though retired sounds too gentle for what really happened. 6 years ago, an IED tore through my unit in Kandahar. It crushed my spine and turned my left leg into scrap. That kind of pain doesn't just mark your body, it redraws your entire map. I came back to Melbourne limping, half broken, and angry. My dad had passed, left behind his old motorcycle shop, a greasy, cramped little space filled with rusted tools, worn-out wrenches, and the scent of oil that never really fades. I took it over. Not because I wanted to run a business. I just needed something solid to hold on to. Something real. Strangely enough, that shop saved me. There's a rhythm to fixing things. Broken parts, busted engines, machines that don't want to run anymore. I understood that language. It calmed the noise in my head. Maya Lynn showed up not long after, barely in her 20s, but sharp as a scalpel and twice as precise. She didn't talk much, just observed and worked, like a soldier who knew when to shut up and get it done. I respected that. A year in, I gave her 20% of the business. No big speech, no ceremony, just a signed contract and a nod. She'd earned it. Then there was Reese, ex-intelligence, now a forensic accountant. We met through a vet network. The guy could read numbers the way snipers read wind. I brought him in for one reason: insurance. Not the policy kind. The real kind. The kind that watches your six in case things get ugly. We never planned for betrayal, but we prepared for stress. The quiet kind that builds pressure like a slow leak in a fuel line. And then the crash came. I won't say it hit out of nowhere. Looking back, maybe there were signs. But the moment it dropped, everything I'd rebuilt, the peace, the trust, the stability, it shattered just like that IED blast years ago. Only this time, it wasn't my spine. It was my world. And just like that, the rules changed. It was supposed to be a simple ride. Nothing fancy. Just a quick test run on a rebuilt Ducati. Wet roads, tight corner, nothing I hadn't handled before. But I missed the oil slick. 1 second I was leaning into the turn, the next, nothing. Just silence. Then darkness. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed, head throbbing, ribs crushed, every breath like knives, tubes down my throat, machines beeping like some twisted symphony. I couldn't move, couldn't talk, just blink and try to remember what the hell happened. Claire wasn't there. Instead, her sister sat by the bed, rigid posture, fake smile, eyes darting like she wanted to be anywhere else. "Claire's busy," she muttered. That sentence felt heavier than my body, and just like that, something cracked inside me. A small crack, but deep, the kind that spreads when you're not looking. 10 days in ICU. 10 days of pain meds, chest tubes, and nurses trying to keep me alive while I quietly tried to piece myself back together. Finally, they gave me my phone. My hands were shaking, but I opened my email. Muscle memory. That's when I saw it. No greeting, no warmth. Just one line that hit harder than the crash itself. "Let's not make this harder than it has to be." That was it. That was Claire. That was how she told me she was filing for divorce. No hospital visit, no explanation. Just a cold corporate breakup line dropped into my inbox like a final bill. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it, trying to breathe through a chest that already didn't want to work. The woman I thought I was building a life with, gone. And not just gone, vanished like I was already dead, like my coma had been a convenient exit. Lying there, shattered bones and all, I realized something. This wasn't just an accident. This was a reset, and I wasn't waking up to the same life I had before the crash. I was waking up to a war I didn't see coming. The day I found out wasn't loud. It didn't come with sirens or screaming. It came with silence and a hold tone. I called the bank. Just a routine check on our accounts. I expected the usual numbers, the same balances I'd been watching over for years. Instead, I got a pause. Then the voice said, "I'm sorry, sir, but those accounts have been closed." All of them. Every joint account. Drained. My stomach dropped. I thought it was a mistake, some security error, but deep down, I knew. Next, I called my accountant. Reese picked up on the second ring, but his voice was different. Office hesitant. Like he didn't want to be the one holding the match to light this fire. He said, "Ethan, you need to sit down." "I'm already lying in a hospital bed," I snapped. Then he said the words that felt like another car crash. "Claire sold the garage, said you gave her power of attorney." I froze. I actually stopped breathing for a second, not from the injuries, but from pure disbelief. Sold. She sold my garage, the one place that gave me purpose, the one place I rebuilt after the war tore me down. She sold it while I was lying unconscious, hooked up to machines, fighting for every breath. I didn't even know you could do something like that. I thought power of attorney was serious, locked down legal stuff, something that required consent, paperwork, lawyers. Turns out, I was right. You can't do it, not legally. But if you forge the documents just well enough, if you get the notary in your pocket and wait until your husband's body is broken and his voice is silenced, nobody asks too many questions, not when it's all dressed up to look clean. Claire forged everything. She used my name, my signature, and my trust, and sold off the garage like it was hers to give away. Every tool, every lift, every drop of sweat I poured into that place was handed over for cash while I lay helpless in a hospital bed. That was the moment it all changed. The pain from the crash? That was physical. This was something else. This was war. A different battlefield, sure, but the stakes felt even higher. I wasn't just recovering anymore. I was coming back for answers, and I was going to get them. I didn't yell, didn't send threats, didn't even reply. I just listened, let her believe she'd won. Claire packed up her guilt and moved into a shiny high-rise downtown with her new shadow, Daniel, some venture capital slickback with perfect teeth and dead eyes. The kind of guy who shakes your hand while figuring out how to gut you for profit. I'd seen his type before, in boardrooms, on bases, in backrooms, always smiling, always waiting. Let her have her illusion. I had work to do. I focused on what I could control. My body. Recovery became my mission. Every painful breath, every grueling session of rehab, every time I forced my legs to move when they didn't want to, I pushed, not out of anger, out of intent. She thought the crash took everything, thought the pain, the coma, the hospital bed, I'd never rise from it. She thought she broke me, but I wasn't alone. I still had Maya. She didn't flinch, didn't bail. She showed up, sleeves rolled, eyes sharp, ready to help rebuild from the ashes. Loyalty like that? You don't ask for it, you earn it. And I still had Reese. He saw through the numbers, traced the lies, quietly collecting details while the world thought I was down for the count. Between the three of us, we had something stronger than revenge. We had patience. While Claire and Daniel toasted their stolen victory with champagne and rooftop views, I was building something else, something colder, something calculated. Because there's a kind of calm that comes after betrayal, a clarity. You stop reacting. You start planning. Let her think she won. She forgot who I was. I'd survived war, explosions, surgeries, and sleepless nights that never seemed to end. I'd survived my own mind more than once. This wasn't defeat. This was the silence before the storm. And I was done being quiet. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. Maya. She never called me during the day. She knew I was still in and out of rehab, focusing on getting my legs to work like they used to. But this time, her voice was shaking. I could hear it before she even said a word. "Ethan, he came to the shop." I sat up straight. "Who?" "A man. Said he's the new owner. He had paperwork. Real stuff. Signatures, stamps, everything. Told me we had 2 weeks to clear out." I didn't say anything right away. Just stared at the wall, heart pounding like it wanted to break through my ribs. 2 weeks. That was all the time we had left in the place I built from the ground up. The place that kept me sane after the war, that gave me a reason to keep fighting. The shop wasn't just steel and oil. It was memory, identity, home. And now, some stranger was handing out eviction notices like we were squatters in our own story. I could hear Maya trying to hold it together on the other end of the line. But I knew her. She wasn't crying because she was scared. She was furious. So was I. That was the moment something shifted in me, snapped clean in half. Up until then, I'd been playing it cool, watching, waiting, giving Claire the benefit of the doubt that maybe she'd walk back the betrayal or at least try to make it right. But this was the line. You don't steal a man's home, sell off his blood and sweat, and then send someone else to throw out the people who stood by him. That day, the gloves came off. No more silence, no more hesitation. Claire thought she ended me. She just lit the fuse. After the call from Maya, everything in me shifted. The pain, the betrayal, the silence. I channeled it into one thing: action. I called Reese. He didn't need much convincing. He was already on high alert, sensing the storm before I did. The moment he heard the word eviction, his tone changed. The easygoing banter we usually had disappeared. In its place was military precision, the voice of a man who once hunted threats in places where shadows lied. Reese got to work. He started with public records, title transfers, lease agreements, corporate filings. He pulled metadata off emails, traced headers, cross-referenced signatures. It wasn't long before the whole rotten structure started to show itself, and like all dirty operations, it was messy, but not clean enough to hide the fingerprints. Claire hadn't just sold the shop. She built an entire lie to make it happen. She filed a forged medical proxy while I was unconscious in a hospital bed. In that document, she claimed I was in a persistent vegetative state, unresponsive, permanently incapacitated. According to her, I was never coming back. That lie gave her the fake authority she needed to act on my behalf. On paper, it looked like I had authorized her to liquidate the business, dissolve our joint holdings, and transfer the lease. But that wasn't the worst of it. The buyer? Daniel. Or more precisely, a holding company under his name. One of those shell corporations that existed solely to hide real ownership. But Reese found it, traced it through 3 states, 4 addresses, and an offshore mailbox that led straight back to Daniel's private fund. The notary who verified my signature? Claire's cousin, a failed mortgage broker who'd recently gone into private document services. He wasn't licensed in the state. The stamp he used had expired. He'd notarized that forged proxy with a smile and a favor. And the timing? Just days after I slipped into a coma. The ink was still wet on my medical chart when they filed the paperwork. They thought I'd never wake up. But here's what they didn't count on. 6 months before the crash, I signed over co-ownership of the shop to Maya. Quietly. No press, no parade. Just a private, fully notarized agreement, legal, binding, and buried in the business records under her name. A 20% stake that, on paper, made her more than an employee. It made her a partner, and that changed everything. Because that agreement meant Claire didn't have the legal right to sell the shop. Any transfer of ownership required Maya's signature too. But Maya hadn't signed anything. In fact, she wasn't even aware a sale had gone through until the new owner walked in. So Reese ran the numbers again. He brought in a legal contact from his military days, someone who specialized in white-collar fraud. The verdict? Not only was the sale invalid, it was criminal. Fraud, forgery, perjury, real charges, real consequences. Claire and Daniel had built their little empire on a foundation of lies, and they thought no one would notice. They thought no one would dig deep enough. They thought I'd stay broken, out of the way, just a name on a chart with no voice and no fight left in me. They were wrong, and that was the moment I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Clarity. This wasn't just about getting the shop back. This wasn't even about revenge. This was about making sure they answered for every lie, every stolen signature, every smug smile they shared behind my back. They wanted to erase me, to rewrite the ending of my story while I was still on the operating table. But I was still here, and with Reese by my side, Maya in my corner, and the law finally on our side, I knew exactly what was coming next. We weren't just going to stop them. We were going to expose everything. Reese didn't stop. Not after we uncovered the fake proxy, not after we traced the sale to Daniel's holding company. That man has a quiet fury when he works. calm on the outside, but you can practically hear the gears grinding behind his eyes. And what he found next turned my personal betrayal into something far bigger. Turns out, this wasn't Claire and Daniel's first con. Far from it. They'd been doing this for years. Reese uncovered a pattern, one that stretched across Victoria like a spider web. Multiple properties, always the same setup. Someone vulnerable, someone distracted by grief or illness, someone too tired or too trusting to read the fine print. Elderly couples, widowed retirees, terminally ill spouses. The marks were always just weak enough for Claire and Daniel to move in with paperwork, false smiles, and forged documents. They didn't just target people, they preyed on them. One case stuck with me. A 78-year-old man in Geelong. His wife had late-stage dementia. Claire had worked as a consultant for his estate planning. Within 6 weeks, he'd signed over the deed to their home. Reese got in touch with the man's son, who confirmed his dad didn't even remember meeting her, but the sale had gone through. Just like mine, it was bigger than us now. We compiled everything: bank records, emails, notary logs, even video footage where we could find it. Maya helped too. She was the one who organized the files, cross-referenced the victims, and even tracked down one of Claire's aliases used on a previous deal. She never said it out loud, but I could see it in her eyes. This wasn't just about the shop anymore. It was about making it right. When we turned it all over to the Victoria Police Fraud Unit, they took it seriously. This wasn't a couple of forged signatures anymore. This was coordinated, predatory fraud. I stayed out of the spotlight, didn't give statements, didn't talk to lawyers unless I had to. I just watched as the case started to grow legs, then claws, then teeth. 3 weeks later, I was sitting across from the garage at a corner cafe. I had a flat white in one hand and my phone in the other, checking messages from Maya and Reese. The pain in my back still flared up when I sat too long, but that morning I barely noticed it. Because I saw them. 2 unmarked cars rolled up outside the shop, then the uniforms, then the detectives. Claire and Daniel were both inside. It all happened fast, just like that moment in Kandahar when everything changed in a heartbeat. Doors opened, officers moved, and within minutes, Claire and Daniel were outside, cuffed in broad daylight. No screaming, no fighting, just wide eyes and tight jaws. Claire spotted me across the street as they led her to the car. She tried to say something, but the cop nudged her forward. I didn't wave, I didn't blink. I just sipped my coffee and watched. Forgery, fraud, elder exploitation, racketeering. Those were just the initial charges. They weren't just criminals, they were professionals. This had been their business model. I was just the latest victim, but not the last, not anymore. That moment wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about truth catching up, about the lies finally collapsing under the weight of their own arrogance. The dominoes had started to fall, and I wasn't going to stop them. In the weeks that followed the arrests, the world didn't suddenly feel lighter. There were no fireworks, no cathartic ending, just silence, and the quiet, persistent hum of things slowly returning to where they belonged. Maya kept the shop alive. She could have walked away. Nobody would have blamed her. She'd been dragged into the fire through loyalty alone, but instead, she doubled down, took the reins, reopened under a new name, Rivera and Lynn Motors. She told me about it over a coffee one afternoon, casual like it wasn't the most meaningful thing anyone had done for me in years. She even repainted the garage door, deep charcoal with bold white lettering. And right in the center, a custom crest, my dad's old initials carved into the shape of a wrench. That one hit me hard. She didn't need to ask permission. She knew what it meant. That door used to be my shield, my way of honoring the man who taught me how to fix engines and hold a promise. Now, it stood taller than ever. Not just mine anymore. Ours. One morning, I opened my inbox and saw her name. Claire. A short message, almost sterile. No greeting, no apology. Just, I didn't mean to hurt you. I stared at it for a long time. There was no anger left, no room for it. Only this strange, cold understanding that she'd never really known me. Or maybe she had, and just never cared enough to stop. I didn't reply, because honestly, I didn't mean to survive either, but I did. That's when the second message came in, one that stayed with me far longer. It was from someone I didn't recognize at first. Olivia, Daniel's ex-wife. Her words were simple, unpolished, real. They tried the same thing to my dad. You stopped them. Thank you. That was it. No long story, no drama, just one truth cutting through the noise. What I'd fought through hadn't just been for me. That message, it stuck. It reminded me that sometimes you don't get to choose the fire, but if you're lucky or just stubborn enough, you get to pull someone else out of it while you're crawling through. So yeah, I lost a lot. But I kept something too. My name's still on that garage door, right next to hers, Rivera and Lynn. And this time, we're building it right. These days, I live up the coast. Quiet town, no traffic, no deadlines. Just the sound of wind through the trees and the occasional hum of an engine from my garage. It's the kind of place where people still wave when they pass by, and the barista knows your order before you even speak. I rent a small house not far from the water. Nothing fancy, tin roof, creaky steps, tools everywhere. There's a cane by the door and grease under my fingernails. Most mornings, I limp out to the garage, roll up the door, and get to work on whatever old bike someone's dropped off. Nortons, Harleys, beaten up Yamahas held together with duct tape and stubbornness. I don't ask for backstories. They just leave the keys and trust me to bring it back to life. There's peace in the process, a kind of quiet that doesn't need to be earned anymore. No headlines, no drama. Just me, the metal, and the memory of what it took to get here. But as I've learned, some stories don't end where you expect. About a month after Claire and Daniel were arrested, Reese called. I could tell from the first second that something was off. He didn't ease into the conversation, just said flatly, "It's bigger than we thought." He'd kept digging, even after the arrests. Turns out, the fraud wasn't just about greed or desperation. It was systemic. Daniel had been laundering money, part of a much larger real estate scam operating across multiple states. Dozens of shell companies, offshore accounts, fake buyers, phantom sellers, crooked agents, the whole thing built on lies and stolen lives. Reese said my case had triggered interest from federal investigators, what we thought was just personal betrayal. Claire selling my shop behind my back turned out to be the key to cracking a larger operation. The forged proxy, the fake sale, the paper trail, it all pointed to something much deeper, something organized. My crash didn't just reveal her betrayal, it exposed an entire network. And for the first time, I realized that what happened to me wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of something that had taken homes from retirees, bled dry families in mourning, and stripped assets from people who didn't even know they'd been targeted. Claire and Daniel weren't just thieves, they were cogs in a machine. So yeah, I lost a wife. I lost a piece of my life I thought I'd built on solid ground. But in losing that, I helped expose something that might have gone unchecked for years. Maya kept the shop alive. Reese helped tear the mask off a criminal ring. And me? I survived. Barely. But I did. And then one day, I got a message. Not from Claire, but from someone I'd never met. Her name was Olivia, Daniel's ex-wife. She wrote, "They tried the same thing to my dad. You stopped them. Thank you." That was it. No punctuation, no fluff, just raw truth. And in that moment, I understood something. Maybe we don't always get to pick the fight, but if we're lucky, or just stubborn enough, we can change the ending. So, I keep going. One engine at a time. One day at a time. Alive, awake, and finally, free.